Hollow Man versus the 2020 update of The Invisible Man. Two horror thriller adaptations of H.G. Wells' The Invisible Man. But which adaptation is better? Let's have them battle and find out. Spoilers ahead. In Hollow Man, the antagonist is Sebastian Cain, a scientist group leader in charge of an invisibility serum for the military. Sebastian isn't particularly evil straight away. It's a similar transformation to H.G. Wells' Invisible Man. Scientist, who fancies himself as a god, develops a serum, turns invisible, goes crazy with power, then causes havoc. Except Sebastian can't turn back visible. He's stuck that way, therefore inciting a different path to madness. In The Invisible Man, our antagonist is Adrian. Now, Adrian is instantly portrayed as an evil, abusive partner to protagonist Cecilia. There isn't any kind of transformation in his motive. He wants his ex-partner back the only way he knows how: control. Adrian's main plan is to retain control of her. It's a bit convoluted how he does it, but it still works in the overall narrative. His plan is fake his own death, have his lawyer brother tell Cecilia she's getting the inheritance, then use an invisible suit to cause menace to the point where she's deemed too insane to hold on to the inheritance money. She's left with nothing, so Adrian can return, blame his brother for kidnapping him the whole time, and take her back to bear a child through unwanted invisible pregnancy. Not straightforward, but still a plan. In Hollow Man, Sebastian does have a less complex plan. But that plan is to keep the invisibility power to himself, kill all those who know about it, so he can leave the lab and use his power for groping women? That's it?
That's perverse.
Don't get me wrong, Sebastian is interesting to watch, but you don't feel any real sense of dread or threat from him till at least the second act. Adrian has a lot more threatening presence because of his stronger motivations. The Invisible Man wins this round. In Hollow Man, we mainly follow Linda as the main protagonist. Linda, similar to Cecilia, is the ex-partner of the soon-to-be Hollow Man. The difference here is that Linda is a co-worker scientist manipulated by Sebastian not to inform anyone else to risk the project shutting down so her career isn't ruined. Obviously, it is for his own benefit to have the status and power for himself. Cecilia is instantly portrayed to have shown years worth of control and abuse. The film looks to be heading in the wrong direction when Cecilia tells us about Adrian's abusive traits instead of us being shown at first glimpse.
Controlling when I left the house, and what I said, and eventually what I thought.
That is until we are shown gradual information that something isn't quite right with what is happening around her. Both characters we follow are victims of clear manipulation, but where this truly sets apart is their arc. Cecilia is broken at the start, always one step behind Adrian for the most part, has to evolve and become the hunter instead of the hunted to eventually gain her blood-splattered revenge. Perhaps not the perfect arc, but still well developed enough to be invested in. Linda's arc is nothing quite like this at all. Straight away, she hooks up with another co-worker to get over Sebastian. There's no real struggle like Cecilia. The film wants you to believe she's cool by making her a hypersexualized scientist who transforms into an 80s-style action hero when the story needed to be in Act 3. Whereas Cecilia confronting with Adrian is fueled by thrilling-induced cat-and-mouse narrative, Linda just tends to brush it off with one-liners to look cool.
What bothers you most? That you don't have a life? Or that I do? Try me.
You go, girl.
You go, girl.
This is another win for The Invisible Man.
Bang.
The visual narrative for both films is paranoia. Am I being watched? The way The Invisible Man does this to build tension in some scenes is by panning across to what appears to be an empty space. Or is it? The invisible suit is kept largely hidden until the end of Act 2. This keeps the fear of the unknown and paranoia most effective till this point. Hollow Man has this narrative in its slogan, so you would think it would focus on this quite a lot, wouldn't you? But for the most part, it's just Sebastian groping his female colleagues.
You smell kind of pretty. Wanna smell me?
Creepy, but that's about it. We do get visual cues that he may be around in the scene where he kills his boss, but that scene revels more in how good the effects look over building a frightening atmosphere. Granted, this film is now over 20 years old, but I have to judge these effects by the time they were released, not just now. There wasn't really a lot at the time that came out that competed with its effects. Every human body detail during the invisibility process is realistically visible and also very incredibly accurate. 95 million's worth budget well spent. We're comparing both films at what they're best at visually. The Invisible Man has a fantastic focus on visual fear. Hollow Man puts in an insane level of visual detail with how an updated serum would work in today's world to turn you invisible. Invisible Man hasn't done anything wrong, it's just that Hollow Man pushed so hard in the visual department that it has to get the win for this round. When both of your movie's threats are invisible, sound design is a key aspect to guide its presence. And to be fair, both of them do that. They add little sound nuances as a clue to whether the hollow or invisible man is close by. Whether that's a little rat in the background or a little hiss noise from the Invisible Man suit. So all that's left to compare is the scores. Hollow Man's score is predominantly composed by Jerry Goldsmith. Jerry and director Paul Veronin have worked together before in movies like Total Recall and Basic Instinct, so there is that level of connection of work together previously. Jerry's style is resoundingly towering in orchestral melody that does a solid job in creating a sense of mystery. The Invisible Man score is predominantly composed by Benjamin Wallfisch, who may not be as prestigiously experienced as Goldsmith, but he does have experience combining the elements of mystery and horror. Wallfisch does this by using non-linear sounds, ones that make you think, is that even a human making that noise? Combine it with correctly timed atmosphere building and you have the making of an effective horror-based soundtrack. Goldsmith's score definitely has high levels of grandeur, but comparing each soundtrack on its own, you wouldn't think Hollow Man was a horror thriller, which unfortunately is what it sells itself as. The tone fits mystery and action better than horror, which is unfortunate because Goldsmith has effectively mixed non-linear and majestic orchestral music together before, a little horror film called Poltergeist. Therefore, The Invisible Man wins the round. Hollow Man's invisibility is fueled by a serum that is able to render the body invisible. It's a lot more of an in-depth scientific strategy compared to the original serum in H.G. Wells' Invisible Man.
A little of this injected under the skin of the arm every day for a month. An invisible man can rule the world.
We're also given hints that the animals it is tested on turn them a bit mad after spending too much time in the hollow state. So it's not a surprise to see them affect Sebastian so badly. The Invisible Man goes for a much more practical approach with the optic suit. It's more powered by the effect of illusion and trickery. Hollow Man informs us that Sebastian struggles with light because his power has made his eyelids transparent. It's a clever reminder on the effects of invisibility, one of which you'd easily forget.
Light, his eyelids are transparent.
However, by reminding us to take that effect seriously, the film also shoots itself in the foot by raising the question, how would Sebastian even see in the first place? Light needs to reflect off our retinas to see. If Sebastian's is invisible, how could it reflect anything? He would essentially be blind. Now, the Invisible Man has some inconsistencies too. The suit is strong enough to take out several trained guards, but a sharp pen will cause it to malfunction? But I guess with the security guards and cops, I can believe that, because none of them are trained to deal with a threat like this, are they? Other than that, the consistency of how the invisibility power works remains on a steady course. But then in Hollow Man, the consistency of how the power works there falls apart in the third act. Sebastian is burnt alive, takes a crowbar to the head, gets electrocuted, and only loses his power of invisibility. We were never informed the serum would enhance physical endurance. It feels like I'm watching the one from Captain America being used. This one just gives you invisibility, not invulnerability. The Invisible Man wins for creating its own set of rules and not tripping over them.
This is Sparta!
Now, Now, 2020's The Invisible Man should never have worked compared to Hollow Man. It was part of a franchise that wasn't even sure if it was a cinematic universe anymore. It didn't have the star power Hollow Man had. It was very quick to announce its own themes over its story, and its budget was less than 10% of what Hollow Man had to work with. The success of the outcome simply comes from a better structured plot and a well-crafted characters and suspense. Director Leigh Whannell knew exactly which direction he wanted to take this adaptation in. And the theme of gaslighting, well, that works very well because it puts story and character first, then the themes. If you enforce the theme first to match modern issues over story and character, you'll actually do more harm than good for the story. Once you strip away the visual effects for Hollow Man as well, there's not a great deal else that matches Invisible Man's other qualities. I hope you enjoyed this comparison.
Can you guess what this is?
I start to manipulate some other limbs.